Coming up on today's show, Cindy Gallop is the founder and CEO of MakeLoveNotPorn, launched at TED Talk 2009, pro-sex, pro-porn, pro-knowing the difference. In 2013, she turned MakeLoveNotPorn into the world's first user-generated, human-curated social sex video sharing platform at makelovenotporn.tv, socializing and normalizing sex in order to make it easier to talk about, to promote consent, communication, good sexual values, and good sexual behavior. MakeLoveNotPorn's mission is to end rape culture by spearheading the social sex revolution at thesocialsexrevolution.com. The revolutionary part isn't the sex, but the social. Cindy speaks at conferences globally and consults, describing her approach as, "I like to blow shit up. I am the Michael Bay of business." Welcome to Loving Without Boundaries, where we hear inspiring stories, share actionable advice, and talk about the challenges and the joys of ethical non-monogamy and polyamory. I'm your host, Kitty Shambliss. Coming up after the break, my conversation with Cindy Gallop.
Are you bored with dick pics? Do random hookups and empty chats kill your vibe? Tired of being catfished or wasting time with messages from faceless profiles? Then you need to get Monogamish, a new dating app designed for singles and couples of all genders and sexualities looking for dates, mates, and everything in between. Access exclusive matchmaking events, workshops with dating and sexuality gurus, and exclusive offers so hot you'll just have to see for yourself. Download Monogamish for free from Google Play or the Apple App Store. Monogamish. Explore fluid relationships.
Welcome back to Living Without Boundaries, where I am tickled pink to be here with Cindy Gallop, whose work I learned about from a friend of mine, and I was just mesmerized by your TED Talk and told my team, we've got to get her on the podcast. So thank you so much for saying yes to being here, and I'm really, really looking forward to our conversation.
I'm thrilled to be here, Kitty, and I'm looking forward to it too.
Excellent. So I'd love it if you would share in whatever way feels good and natural to you, just a little bit about who you are and your background, and then we'll start to just go from there.
Sure. So I'm half English, half Chinese. My father was English, my mother's Chinese. I was born in the UK, but when I was 6, my parents moved to Brunei in Borneo. So I grew up in Asia. I went to school, university, and worked for a while in the UK. But these days, I live and work in New York, where I've lived for 25 years. So I'm officially a New Yorker. I'm the founder and CEO of MakeLoveNotPorn. We are pro-sex, pro-porn, pro-knowing the difference. And, I think for the audience of the Living Without Boundaries podcast, what's useful for everyone to know is that I am somebody who has never, ever wanted to be married. I have never wanted children. Very glad that I always knew that, as opposed to finding out the hard way by having them. I am not a relationship person. I adore being single. I cannot wait to die alone. And I date younger men casually and recreationally for sex. And I'm deliberately very public about all of that because we don't have enough role models in our society for women and for men and everybody else that demonstrate you can live your life very differently to the way that you're expected to and still be amazingly happy. And I'm one of the happiest people I know.
I cannot tell you how happy I am to hear all that. That is perfectly, as we were saying before we officially started recording, perfectly aligned with everything we're doing here at Living Without Boundaries, as well as it intersects with a lot of my story. And we won't dive too deep into my story, but I am married, but I do live with two of my partners. So I believe in polyamory and consensual non-monogamy, very sex positive, as is our mission. And I was unsure if I wanted to have children or not. And as fate had it, my husband and I found out we were infertile. And then we eventually, after we did some research, decided not to adopt. And so I know firsthand that when we are coloring outside of the lines of the quote unquote norm, that there can be stigma or ridicule, or people could feel some shame and guilt around choosing that other path. So I am just beside myself excited to have a conversation with you. And I could not agree with you more that we do need more role models. We do need more role models of, you don't have to follow this one playbook. You can follow a completely different playbook and be amazingly happy. And sometimes I even have my own doubts here and there. So even me personally, I love to hear how ecstatically happy you are, with you having also known that at an early age and just kind of rocking your life that way, where it sounds to me like a lot of confidence and courage, but doing it with also grace and style. That's what I'm picking up from that.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So I'd love to talk a little bit about your background, if that's okay, and then we'll eventually get to some of your work. So you said that you knew from a very early age. I'd love to hear more about that. Like, what age were you like, yes, I definitely don't want to get married. I know I don't want to have children. What age was that? I think that's fascinating.
Well, I think, obviously, like all of us, I was born into social conditioning, especially with a Chinese mother, and especially growing up in Asia, where obviously marriage and children are the be-all and the end-all of a woman's life, or expected to be. And so, as a kid, that was my assumption. And I think it was really in my 20s that, I really, I've no maternal instincts whatsoever. I really don't want children. And increasingly, I always say that one of the best moments of my life, and this wasn't literally a moment, it was kind of a gradual realization more, was the day that I decided to stop looking for the one. Because from the moment we're born as women, we are told by everything around us in popular culture, in our families, that our entire life is a search for the one. And so in your teens, your 20s, every social event you go to, will he be there? I'm straight, so I'm talking heteronormatively in this instance. And, what that means is that you spend ages glamming yourself up. You go to the event. This is a form of social conditioning that forces you to compete with other women, a dynamic that I deplore. And at the end of the night, you schlep home going, oh, he wasn't there tonight, maybe next time. And, at some point in, I think it was my early 30s, I just went, sod this. I'm not looking for the one anymore. Oh my God, the relief. I could just go to social events and enjoy myself, And this is why, as I said earlier, I'm very vocal about the way I choose to live my life, because there are many people out there living lives they don't really want to be living. There are many people out there who voluntarily allowed their life to slide into oiled grooves that were a product of what their parents told them they should be doing, what everybody around them was doing, what popular culture tells them they ought to want. And I really want to encourage everybody to take a long, hard look inside themselves and ask, what would really make me happy? Do I really want children? Do I really want to get married? Do I really want monogamy? Do I really want a life partner? And as I said earlier, I'm living my life out loud because we absolutely don't have enough role models for any of this. We don't have them in movies and television where, again, still, finding the one, having children, the be-all and the end-all. And at the same time, there are many people living like me, a lot of whom are nervous to kind of say out loud what I've said, that I don't want children, that I don't want to be with somebody, that I don't want to be monogamous. And so, I think the best thing those of us who are willing to be public about it can do is, act as role models, encourage many, many more role models to emerge and feel able to speak out as well.
Wow. So beautifully said, and just completely resonates with me in so many ways. So even before we had this conversation, as I was watching your TED Talk, I just thought, wow, this woman is a badass, like totally courageous and just full on out there. Like I often say, I sometimes will say things that I think other people are thinking, but they won't actually say out loud. You know? So I really appreciate you saying that you want to live out loud, that you do it proudly, to be a role model so that more people will feel safe. Like, you're basically a trailblazer in a lot of ways by doing that. And I know even in my own life, a lot of the pushback, whether it's subtle, like some people call it microaggressions, or kind of more in your face about living a life coloring outside of the lines of what we're told we are supposed to be doing. I'd love to hear how, whether it's like a belief system that you adopted, or just how you maneuvered through when maybe you either subtly or overtly got pushback about the way you're choosing to live your life, and how you got to the other side of that.
The interesting thing is, Kitty, I really haven't had any pushback.
Wow.
Now, I think that's because for the last 18 years, I've been an entrepreneur, so I've worked for myself.
Mm-hmm.
So in that scenario, I can choose the environments I spend time in. Mm-hmm. I always say to people, stay away from people and places and things that make you feel bad about yourself. Okay, that's a very good life motto. So I haven't had pushback. In fact, quite the opposite. Because of what I do, I am asked to do a lot of media interviews and all sorts of interviews. And I have been really blown away myself by the responses to those. So, for example, last year, Style Like You, which is a wonderful kind of fashion platform run by a mother and daughter duo, Elisa and Lily, mm-hmm. They have a video interview series called What's Underneath. Mm. And the format of this series is that they operate across different demographics. They have an older people, what's underneath, they have couples. But the idea is that the interviewee sits on a stool and the camera is trained on them, and Elisa and Lily are behind the camera. And they ask the interviewee questions. And as you answer each question, you remove an item of clothing. The idea being that you both metaphorically and literally strip down to what's underneath. So they asked me to do this as part of their, talking to older women especially, series of What's Underneath. And I was very happy to do that. So at the age of then 62, I'm 63 now, I took off all my clothes down to my underwear. Mm-hmm. And I was really blown away and actually very moved by the response to this interview on YouTube and Instagram, and especially, by the way, on TikTok. Mm-hmm. So I went viral on TikTok. Gen Z loves me. And there are 900, there are millions of views of these clips on TikTok, but there are 900 versions on TikTok where, people take a bit of your audio video and repurpose it with their own. And a ton of them are used that meme, I have seen my future and it is bright. And the thing that really struck me in all of these comments across those various channels was the number of young people, but especially young women, mm-hmm. saying, oh my God, all my life I've been looking for an older female role model like this. And in fact, there was one very moving comment on the video on Instagram where a young woman said, imagine if we had all grown up seeing and hearing women live and talk like this. Imagine how very different our lives will be now. And so, out there are so many people, especially women, who are desperate for role models like you and me, mm-hmm. and that's what I encounter all the time. So I don't get pushback; I get the reverse. I get to see for myself how desperately people need to know there are other ways of living and being.
Mm-hmm. That's fascinating, and thank you for, again, just being so candid and open and honest and very inspirational. I'm 53, so you are a decade older than me. And in the work that I do, I've spoken at colleges. I work with clients who often might only be a few years younger than me, or even a few years older than me. But it's fascinating to have this conversation with you, who is a decade ahead of being that trailblazer, because I think also is very inspirational, because I think I haven't had a ton of hate mail, but I have gotten some, being called an adulteress and a whore and all of that, right? Not as much as you might think, but I think some of the pushback I feel is almost the subtle social conditioning. So what I'm hearing from you, right, correct me if I'm wrong, is you just don't worry about it.
No.
You just don't worry about it at all.
No, I couldn't care less, Kitty.
Yeah.
But whenever I'm asked my superpower, which is also a question that comes up in interviews, I go, I don't give a damn what anybody thinks.
Mm-hmm. And that is a total superpower.
And that is the only way to live your life.
Mm-hmm. I think that's great. I came into this interview very, very fresh with an open mind. Like I didn't have like a full list of questions, and I'm completely inspired already. And we're only like 10 minutes in. So I'd love to just ask like an open-ended question, which would be, being that you are 10 years ahead of me and you kind of see the track that I'm on with the work that I'm doing, which is very much in alignment with yours, just maybe starting later. What would be some advice or some words of wisdom or things that have really helped you live a magical, blessed, happy life being a trailblazer? I mean, I heard one, which is you just don't give a damn what anybody thinks, which is awesome. Like any other kind of nuggets like that?
Well, now, first of all, I would just push back on the magical, blessed life because I have to tell you, Kitty, my life is shitty on a daily basis because of what I've chosen to do. So, for the past 14 years, I've fought an enormous battle every single day to build Make Love Not Porn and to keep it alive. Basically because every piece of business infrastructure any other tech startup takes for granted, we can't because the small print always says no adult content. So I live a very challenging work and business life every day because of what I've chosen to be an entrepreneur in. So I just want to make clear that it's not quite as magical and blessed as all of that. But what I will tell you, coming out of that, Kitty, is, so I've spent the past 14 years since my TED Talk parallel pathing two things. Working to build Make Love Not Porn and working to change the cultural and business context around it. Because when you have a truly world-changing startup, you have to change the world to fit it, not the other way around. And so this is what I recommend to everybody because, as I mentioned earlier, I do a lot of interviews, and so inevitably that there are questions that recur in those interviews. So here's another question I'm asked all the time. The journalists will go, usually at the end of interviewing me about Make Love Not Porn, they'll say something like, so Cindy, when do you think all of this will change? When do you think we'll be less repressed about sex? And this is the point at which I start laughing. Okay, and I say to the journalist that, now, I do apologize. I'm not laughing at you. I'm laughing at the way you asked that question. And I say to them, and there's no reflection on you because this is what society teaches us to do, but I will say, you made the mistake of asking that question in the passive tense. All of this changes when you and I and everyone else make it change, and I don't wait for things to change, I make them change. And so, what I would say to you, doing what you're doing and all the rest of us, change the world to fit us, not the other way around. Because 14 years later, it's been a long, hard battle every day, as I said, but I'm absolutely seeing those barriers falling. And that's because I'm one of the people who's been working to make them fall.
Yes. What a great answer. And thank you for being very clear too about the way I'd asked my question. I appreciate that, which just, underscores your badassery. So another great role model for that. I think that's an amazing answer. I chose to wear a different shirt than my Living Without Boundaries shirt, but I really resonate with what you said as well, because I did a series of career number one was a graphic designer. And so I'm able to use that for marketing for Living Without Boundaries. And the very first t-shirt I created said, be the change that you want to see in the world. So I absolutely align with what you said there too, that I didn't know if I would see it in my lifetime, but part of the work that I'm doing is to help create more tolerance and acceptance and understanding around coloring outside the lines of heteronormative monogamy, as well as being sex positive. So again, totally right in alignment with you.
And so, and sorry to interrupt, Kitty, but just in terms of where I come from, I'm bloody determined to see it in my lifetime. Because it's all very well blazing the trail for the ones that come after us. But what is that to me if I'm dead? Okay? So I am making shit happen because I insist on seeing that change happen in my own lifetime.
That's amazing. Yeah, the determination. And I love having, this will be an audio recording just so you know, but I love seeing you on camera because your passion, your energy is just off the charts. So now that I know where you live, I think we have to do lunch because I'm just falling in love with you. So I couldn't agree more. And that's my hope, but I like your determination of, not screw hope, but, I'm determined to make this as much as I'm able to in my lifetime, as well as to be happy and vibrant and enjoying great sexual experiences well into, God willing, our 90s and beyond. I'm all for that. So thank you for that. So I guess the next thing I would love to think through or talk out loud with you is where, like, you're so sex positive, like, was there a light bulb moment for you of just this kind of journey? I know you mentioned like in your 20s was when you kind of had the full epiphany about that you didn't want to have kids, you didn't want to get married. Was there also a light bulb moment about this kind of sex positivity kind of trailblazing that you've been on?
So I would say that there are two junctures. I mean, the first is that, as I mentioned, with a Chinese mother growing up in Asia, my parents never taught me about sex. Okay, zero sex education. In Asian culture, very repressed about sex. And so, when I finally had sex, I went, oh my God, this is bloody amazing. Why are we all so messed up about it? That was kind of one thought early on. But honestly, the thing about Make Love Not Porn is that it was a complete and total accident. So I never consciously intentionally set out to do anything I very bizarrely find myself doing now. Basically, it came about because, as I mentioned earlier, I date younger men. They tend to be in their 20s. And so 15, 16 years ago, I began realizing through my direct personal experience dating younger men that when we don't talk openly and honestly about sex in the real world, porn becomes sex education by default in not a good way. And I realized this, Kitty, long before anybody else was writing about this, talking about this. This was me in isolation, encountering a number of sexual behavioral memes in bed, going, whoa, I know where that behavior comes from. Gosh, if I'm experiencing this, other people must be as well. And I'm a naturally action-oriented person. And so 15 years ago, I just went, I'm going to do something about this. So purely as a little side venture, 14 years ago, I put up on no money a tiny, clunky website at MakeLoveNotPorn.com that in its original version was just copy. The construct was porn world versus real world. Here's what happens in the porn world. Here's what really happens in the real world. I launched it at TED, as you've seen, in 2009. I became the only TED speaker to say the words, come on my face, on the TED stage, 6 times in succession. The talk went viral as a result, and it drove this extraordinary global response to my tiny website that I had never anticipated. Thousands of people wrote to me from every single country in the world.
Wow.
Young and old, men and female, straight and gay, pouring their hearts out, telling me things about their sex lives and their porn watching habits they'd never told anybody before. And I realized I'd uncovered a huge global social issue. And so that was when I felt I had a personal responsibility. I had to take Make Love Not Porn forwards in a way that would make it much more far-reaching, helpful, and effective. And so I turned it into a business designed to do good and make money simultaneously. And so that's why today, Make Love Not Porn is the world's first and only user-generated, 100% human-curated social sex video sharing platform. So we're kind of what Facebook would be if it allowed you to socially, sexually self-express, which it clearly doesn't. The way to think about Make Love Not Porn is, if porn is the Hollywood blockbuster movie, Make Love Not Porn is the badly needed documentary. We are a unique window onto the funny, messy, loving, wonderful ways we all have sex in the real world. And what we're doing is we are socializing and normalizing sex, bringing it out of the shadows into the sunlight in order to promote consent, communication, good sexual values, and good sexual behavior. We are literally sex education through real world demonstration.
Incredible. Yeah. And what a powerful, powerful mission. I would have to imagine you're the only company and person that is doing that, right? Like, doesn't exist anywhere else.
No,
that's incredible.
No. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, just totally being a complete pioneer and all of that. I'm curious, since this has been, I think you said a 14-year from start to where we are now?
14 years is when I launched the first version of Make Love Not Porn, and we launched the business 10 years ago.
Okay. So one thing I'd love to understand a little better for our listeners too is, what were maybe some of the key pivotal moments in creating the whole business, and how you navigated through them that you think our listeners might find interesting?
Sure. Well, I think, the first response to that question, Kitty, is I'd love to show our listeners how very uniquely Make Love Not Porn operates. And the reason for that is because I want people to have a sense of what the future of the internet could be like when women design it. Because the young white male founders of the giant tech platforms that dominate our lives today, they are not the primary targets, online or offline, of harassment, abuse, sexual assault, violence, rape, revenge porn. Therefore, they did not and they do not proactively design for the prevention of any of those things on their platforms. And we see the results around us every single day. Those of us who are most at risk every single day, women, Black people, people of color, LGBTQ, the disabled, we design safe spaces and safe experiences. I and my tiny team spent literally years concepting, designing Make Love Not Porn before we ever built it, because we knew if we were going to invite people to do something they've never done before, socially share their real world sex, we had to think through every possible ramification of that to create a completely safe and trustworthy space. And as a result, not only do we operate unlike anybody else in the adult sphere, we operate unlike anybody else on the internet, period. And that's because I designed Make Love Not Porn through the female lens around what everybody else should have, nobody else did, human curation. There is no self-publishing of anything on Make Love Not Porn. Our curators watch every frame of every video submitted from beginning to end before we approve or reject, and we publish it. No one else does that. We review every post on every member profile before we approve or reject and publish it. No one does that. We review every comment on every video before we approve and publish it. No one does that. We can vouch for every single piece of content on our platform, and that is why we are the safest place on the internet. That is what the internet can be like through the female lens. So that being said, that's why we have this amazing community of both members and contributors who we call our Make Love Not Porn stars. And I decided to Make Love Not Porn 14 years ago to democratize access to income, because I designed it around a revenue sharing business model. Our members pay to subscribe, rent and stream our social sex videos. Half the income goes to our contributors, our Make Love Not Porn stars. So, bear in mind that women design very differently, and they design for the safety of everybody. Then I want to highlight something that I think is especially interesting in the context of your podcast, because, so as a unique venture, we have a unique capability. Make Love Not Porn has the power to change people's sexual attitudes and behavior for the better in a way that nothing else can. And, a couple of examples of that. Our social sex videos are enormously reassuring because we celebrate real-world everything. Real-world bodies, real-world hair, real-world penis size, real-world breast size, real-world vulvas. And the reason that's important is because you can talk body positivity all you like. You can preach self-love till you're blue in the face, but at the end of the day, nothing makes us feel great about our own bodies like seeing people who are no one's idea of aspirational body types getting turned on by each other, desiring each other, having an amazing time in bed. And that's important because popular culture tells us every day, you are not hot, You won't try to desirable unless you are this skinny, six-pack abs, look like this. Our members write and say, you've made me feel better about my own body, which is so important. Mm. Then also importantly, we celebrate real-world emotion, intimacy, feelings. And, that's crucial because, again, in popular culture, we see many creative expressions and narratives of relationships, but we never see the actual sex. On Make Love Not Porn, you see the actual sex, but you also see the relationships. Because in our videos, those two things are indivisible. And I don't just mean that in our many partnered threesomes polyamorous videos, you see healthy relationship dynamics within sex. In our many solo videos, because we're many masturbation videos, male, female, trans, non-binary, you see what it's like to have a healthy relationship with yourself, with your own body, your own sexuality, your own genitals. But the reason I highlighted our relevance to living without boundaries is because inevitably, we're not just a platform that showcases the wonderful sex we all have in the real world. Inevitably, our videos showcase the many ways in which people design different relationship models that they find enormously fulfilling and satisfying in the real world. And what I love is that, Make Love Not Porn is inspiring people to see how very differently they could design their own relationships. And our examples of this span an entire spectrum. So for example, at one end of the spectrum, we have a Make Love Not Porn star. She's a woman. She's married. And in her narrative for her videos, because, people write their own narratives and introduce their own videos, she explains that she and her husband have an agreement. Once a year, she is allowed to meet up with her high school sweetheart in a motel room and fuck his brains out. Now, we presume this is a reciprocal arrangement. We don't know because those are the videos that she shares on Make Love Not Porn. She shares videos of herself and her high school sweetheart having a high old time in this motel room. Her husband is not sharing anything from his side. But, I think that's a very interesting example for people who might not be ready for a fully open marriage, but are interested in kind of, negotiating a first step towards opening things up in a very specifically contained way. Okay, so that's one example. Then, of course, we have many, polyamorous relationships. We have threesomes, thruples. But, on Make Love Not Porn, you see the real world version. And so you see the tremendous empathy, sensitivity, respect with which those relationships have been negotiated. And that is also a learning experience and an inspiration for so many people to see that, this is a relationship model that you can embark on in these specific ways that make it feel possibly a lot less threatening, a lot more something that you might talk about. And so, I love the fact that we are a window not just onto how the world has sex, but how the world loves and lives and connects and builds new relationship models.
What a beautiful and in-depth answer. And I love the different examples that you gave as well. So since you've been at this for a while now too, I'm curious if you've noticed any trends. Like, have you noticed more polyamorous or threesomes or like different trends with maybe gender fluidity? Has that been anything that you've seen?
Sure. So first of all, I would just make our listeners aware of the fact that, as I mentioned earlier, it's been very challenging building this business, not least because it's very hard to find investors. So we are very strapped for cash and resources, which means that we are not able to, conduct studies and have the kind of analytics dashboard we love to have and, build tech that would allow us to. And by the way, 14 years on, I am now setting out to raise a serious round of funding to enable us to do all sorts of things, including scaling the business. So what we've observed is predominantly anecdotal and qualitative, rather than quantitative and, in-depth study. But nevertheless, it's been fascinating because to your question, Kitty, I absolutely designed Make Love Not Porn to be the Kinsey of today. Real world, real time, real life human sexual behavior captured and aggregated in a way that nobody else is doing in an area that is notoriously research and data free, because for all the same reasons we battle every day, nobody's building like the ComScore of sex or, And also, by the way, in the area of research and data where there is the widest gap between what people say and what people actually do. And we are all about what people actually do. And so, first of all, people who've been members of Make Love Not Porn and Make Love Not Porn stars tell us, and we can actually see this in the Make Love Not Porn star videos, that being a member of our community has enabled them to be more open about sex and therefore to be more willing to expand their sexual horizons, to experiment more, try new things. There was an entertaining comment that a man who's a member left on a video recently where he said to the Make Love Not Porn stars in it, I think that they'd done something, rather fun. He said, I've always wondered about doing that. It was a complete fantasy. I'd only seen it in porn. But, I showed your video to my wife and she wants to do it. And now we have it. It's wonderful. Thank you. So we absolutely help broaden people's, to horizons. What is also very interesting, too, is that members of our community who are parents tell us that just being part of our community has made them feel able to be more open about sex with their children and to educate them better. And in fact, what we love is that increasingly parents are buying their teenage and 20-something children subscriptions to Make Love Not Porn because they tell us, I want my kids to see what happy, healthy, loving sex relationships look like. Then, something especially interesting, Kitty, is so our community writes to us every day telling us how we've changed their lives, which is amazing.
Yeah.
And it's what keeps me going, But I'm blown away by not only how well Make Love Not Porn does what I designed it to do, but how well it does things that I never consciously designed to do. So in the Designed It to Do segment, we hear all the time from couples to say, you saved our marriage, you saved our relationship, haven't had sex in years, watch your videos together, social sex, come on, let's sex on Sunday night. But in terms of, a use case that I never thought about when I designed this, we are enormously moved to hear regularly from survivors of sexual abuse, assault, rape, and we hear from female survivors, male survivors, trans, non-binary survivors. They tell us that Make Love Not Porn helped them reclaim their bodies.
Wow.
We help them feel able to be sexual again. In a situation where obviously porn is way too triggering. And this isn't just our members who watch the videos, it's also our Make Love Not Porn stars. We have a number of Make Love Not Porn stars who've told us that sharing themselves sexually in a completely safe and trustworthy space enabled them to process and heal from sexual trauma in their past. And I am so enormously humbled by hearing that, because I never conceived that as a use case. As I said, it's wonderful to hear that there is this application that is really helping people. So, those are, some of the ways in which over the years I've learned we can be tremendously helpful to people, which is just fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure that's going to help a lot of our listeners too, because in the work that I do, there's definitely sexual trauma, there is rape victims. So I love hearing that your whole mission, it was like almost a side bonus that you weren't even planning, that it has helped people to process and heal and reclaim their bodies. That's amazing.
And actually, Kitty, I will just, sorry to interrupt, but I will just say to that that's been an unexpected benefit uncovered. But our mission absolutely is ultimately at Make Love Not Porn to end rape culture. And the way we end rape culture, and we have 10 years of proof of concept at a micro level, we end rape culture by doing something incredibly simple that nevertheless nobody else anywhere on the internet is doing. We end rape culture by showing you how wonderful great consensual communicative sex is in the real world. Our social sex videos role model good sexual values and good sexual behavior. And here's the important part. We make all of that aspirational versus what you see in porn and popular culture. And I'll tell you something else that has been a revelation. As I think I've indicated, I decided to Make Love Not Porn to be fully diverse and inclusive. And we are. Our members of our it's like. But over the past 10 years, we've realized that Make Love Not Porn is especially a revelation to men.
Mm.
We get more appreciative emails and comments from men than anybody else because we are against something utterly unique that men will find nowhere else on the internet, which is a safe space where men can be and watch other men being open, emotional, and vulnerable around sex.
Mm-hmm.
You would not believe the number of men who write to us and say, I just watched my first video, Make Love Not Porn, and afterwards I cried.
Wow.
I've been saying for years, I wish society understood the opposite of what it thinks is true. Women enjoy sex just as much as men, and men are just as romantic as women. Yet neither gender is allowed to openly celebrate either fact, and we'd all be a whole lot better off if they were. I picked up a wonderful Twitter exchange between two men last year, where the first man tweeted, and he was obviously joking, went, hey guys, I've got this really weird fetish. I've got this kink where I want to watch porn where people are honest, loving, loyal, decent, and really like each other. Hit me off your hottest links, please. And so another man replied to him and he said, there's this website called Make Love Not Porn where you can watch real couples fucking and making love. He said, I watched a video where the woman said to her man, I love you, while they're making love. He said, sincerely, I cried when I heard that. That is, we are one of the solutions to toxic masculinity. Mm-hmm. And so, imagine all of this funded at scale to be the Facebook of social sex globally. Mm-hmm. Because that's what I'm after. I want to help end rape culture globally. And we are approaching it in a way that nobody else is.
Mm-hmm. Fascinating. Your goals are like off the charts, but what's amazing is you're doing it. Like you're actually doing it. It's not just like some dream. You and your SWAT team there are helping end rape culture. And I love that you mentioned the toxic masculinity as well. So just super, super fascinating. Is there, what's your vision? Like, I assume that this is going to grow and you'll continue on the missions that you're on, but is there, how would you talk about the future of Make Love Not Porn?
So as I said, Kitty, I am now setting out to raise serious funding. I've kept Make Love Not Porn operational for 10 years on just $3 million of funding, and that's an extraordinary feat. So I'm now looking to raise $17 million because it's about time. And that is to both scale the core business, because what you see on MakeLoveNotPorn.tv right now is only half of my full vision, because we're never able to hire our own in-house development team, our own chief technology officer. We're hamstrung in so many ways by lack of funding. But also, I want to build a number of product extensions for Make Love Not Porn that people have been asking us for years. And actually, I've had these in the pipeline for years. I've talked about them publicly for years. It's only now that I've broken down the barriers sufficiently that I'm finding investors who get it and want to fund these. So the first product extension is a really obvious one, because parents and teachers began writing to me from day one of Make Love Not Porn asking for this. I want to build the 0 to 18 version of Make Love Not Porn. MakeLoveNotPorn.academy. I bought the URL many years ago. If you go there, you'll see a very old holding page. Mm-hmm. And this is what I characterize as the Khan Academy of Sex Education. Mm-hmm. Because Khan Academy, the online tutoring platform, tutors on every other topic under the sun except this one. Mm-hmm. Educational technology, EdTech, is exploding as a sector, not in this area. So I want to build out Make Love Not Porn Academy on the same principles as MakeLoveNotPorn.tv, user-generated, crowdsourced, curated revenue share. Because I'm not about reinventing the wheel. This is an aggregation play. I want to build the Academy to be the go-to global hub for the world's sex education content, where I collaborate with everybody, including people like you who are educating on all of this, to be able to showcase and sell your content. And so the way it works is that, when we are funded, we'll build this, and we will invite sex educators all around the world to share with us their own content, coursework materials, books, comic strips, podcasts, whatever it may be. We will curate, by the way. At the heart of everything we do lies human curation. We make sure that we are publishing what we endorse. We will then publish segmented by age appropriateness. So if you're a parent freaking out going, oh my God, my 6-year-old just asked me this, what do I say? Here's where you would go for entirely age-appropriate tools and content to be able to have that conversation with a 6-year-old. If you're a teacher in the class of 14-year-olds, here are your age-appropriate teaching materials. If you're an adult, access all areas. Obviously, the adults are as desperate for this as anybody else. But the important thing, Kitty, is that the Academy will be a hub that children and young people can access without parental teacher gatekeeping. And I'll give you an anecdote that illustrates why this is so important. So I have a friend who's a mother, and as you have to these days, she monitors her kids' browsing history. And this happened a few years ago. Her son was 8 years old, and she saw that on the family computer, he had Googled sex for children. So she freaked out, obviously, but did the right thing, stayed calm, sat him down, went, darling, I see you did this. Talk me through why. And Kitty, this anecdote is adorable and horrifying in equal measure because her son wanted to learn about sex. He was a child. He knew he was a child. He wanted to learn about sex in a child-appropriate way. Oh. And so he Googled sex for children. You can imagine the kind of thing that came back. He was utterly traumatized.
Right.
And so the Academy will be where an 8-year-old can enter his age, and we will only serve that 8-year-old entirely age-appropriate content, for him or whoever it may be. Now, obviously, a lot of this will be free to access, as with that example, but we will also charge to download, subscribe, bulk buy if you're a school. There are different revenue streams, different use cases. And we will then split the income 50-50 with its creators, the educators, the same way we currently do with our Make Love Not Porn stars. Because right now, Kitty, as you will know, nobody goes into sex education to make money. I have friends all around the world who are brilliant sex educators. They face all the same problems I do. Their content gets blocked on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. They can't make a living doing this. They've had to take other jobs to survive. And I want to change that because this is enormously valuable work. I want to showcase all my friends' content and enable them to make a huge income out of it.
Mm-hmm. Incredible. Again, real small goals you got. but you're doing it, which is, again, so inspirational. And I fully support everything that you are doing. And our time is starting to come to a close, but I'd love to just let you share. Is there a question I either didn't ask you or any closing thoughts that you would love to share?
Sure. Well, I think, I'd love to say to our listeners, if you're interested in what I've said, first of all, please go to makelovenotporn.tv, sign up, subscribe. Subscriptions start at $10 a month. It's very affordable. Consider becoming a Make Love Not Porn star. Even in our micro situation, last month, our highest earning Make Love Not Porn star took home $2,200. Multiply that by 12, that's a salary, so yeah, so the benefits. You can find me and Make Love Not Porn. We're at Cindy Gallop, at Make Love Not Porn on Twitter and Instagram. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, at my own website, cindygallop.com. And I would just love you all to consider signing up for something that I've just started to help support Make Love Not Porn, again, given the challenges we face. So over the past 14 years, in our mailbag, inevitably, I've had tons of emails asking for advice about sex. And no matter how stressed out as an entrepreneur I am, I've always written back. Because when, for example, this happened a few years ago, when a teenage boy writes to me and says, I'm having sex with my girlfriend, I want to make love, not porn. Please tell me how to, because I know my parents sure as hell won't. You bet I write back at length. Mm-hmm. And here at Becca went, my girlfriend said, where did you learn that? Yeah. So anyway, and increasingly over the years, also people ask me things across all my social channels. I don't have time to reply to all of them. So I've started a Substack newsletter. It's called Dear Cindy. And when you sign up and subscribe, you can send in any question you want about anything you want. And each week, once a week, I answer a question from the mailbag. So please do find Dear Cindy on Substack. It's free to sign up, but do please take out a paid subscription. Again, it's like $10 a month, so it's very affordable. Because all of that goes to support Make Love Not Porn, and we do need all the support we can get.
Uh-huh. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, I am a huge monster fan of your work, of you, and I'm cheerleading you every step of the way. I'm happy to support your work. Of course, with this podcast episode, that'll be one big way that we can do that. And yeah, just thank you for your time, for your hard work, and everything that you are putting out into the world today, tomorrow, and beyond.
It's been a pleasure, Kitty. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you heard, are struggling with some aspect of your relationships, and you're interested in seeing if you're a fit to work with me as your relationship coach, here's what I invite you to do next. Head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. That's lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply, and book a call to speak with me. I'll get on the phone with you for about 45 minutes, and we'll get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, exactly what's not working well in your relationships right now. Number 2, ideally where you'd like to be and what might be getting in the way. And number 3, the exact strategy to get you there, helping to close that gap. Remember, creating healthy, open relationships does not typically happen by itself. Many often need expert guidance to make it happen. We've helped clients all over the world to feel safe, happy, and secure in open relationships, while not losing their mind or their cherished partners. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to lovingwithoutboundaries.com/apply. I'm Kitty Chambliss, and let's talk soon.